Hey guys, Blake Calhoun, and today I'm going to look at this new short film, or it's a couple months old, but it's new to a lot of us, and that is a vertical cinema short film directed by Damien Chazelle, an Academy Award-winning director, and I'm going to look at it from multiple points of view. I will look at it initially from the idea of shooting things vertically, which I personally do not think is the future of filmmaking, not even close, but it is a cool experiment and I really like what he did here. But then I'm also going to look at things like the gear they use, the crew, point out some stuff that if you've seen the movie or the behind the scenes, you may not have noticed. And I'll point out some stuff that they use that you could incorporate into your own projects. And yes, I know this is a Hollywood level production. You and me, we don't have access to half this stuff. But ultimately they did shoot this on an iPhone, and that's the important part. So yes, they had a lot of money. It was paid for by Apple. They had an Academy Award-winning director. However, they did shoot on an iPhone, and that means that you, me, and everyone watching this could do something similar. Not exact, and that's not the point. The point is to inspire you to get out and make a film. All right, so I'm in Premiere Pro, and I went in and I put a bunch of markers on the actual film to look at some stuff, and then I'll go through the behind the scenes. One really cool thing that he did in this, and I'm not going to go in and talk necessarily about the different scenes per se, I'm just looking more at the framing. And framing vertically, you can see like right here, he used a lot of stairwells. He used a lot of exterior of buildings. Anything upright, I mean, that's probably pretty straightforward stuff to think about, but it is a good way to use vertical framing. Imagine if it was flipped on its side, you would do the same thing with anamorphic or widescreen. You wouldn't shoot a building like that necessarily, but that's the same idea. This is a unique shot here as these guys are running across the building. And I don't know if this could be a composite, meaning a visual effect, I'm not sure. But right here you can see that you've got the building framed up vertically, but then at the top, right here, it's like the top of this frame is actually a 16:9 or a 2:3:5:1 widescreen aspect ratio. And that's pretty unique to mix the two within the one shot. And he does that a couple times in the short film. I really like that. And then of course here, the shot, full body shot, low angle, kind of looks like the Matrix to me, but the vertical framing works well here. And then when he jumps off the building, the same thing. All these shots falling down of these long, elongated shots work well. And again, looking at the crew, looking up the building, this stuff works great. These shots don't work as well here. When you're framing up two people side by side, I don't think the vertical framing really holds up as well. It works much better on either single shots or shots like this where they're coming down something or going up something. And this was part of the thing they did really well with the production design on this. And that is, again, having people come down into a frame or go up into a frame and having shafts of light. Now right here is another example of where he did a frame and a frame, where they're walking through this tunnel. You can see right in the middle here, there is a 16:9 frame, or again, more like an anamorphic frame within that. And this is a visual effects shot, and I'll show that in just a second. But I really like how he did a wide frame within the vertical frame. Pretty unique. He also did a lot of frames within a frame, doorways, like right here. You got a frame, and then you got a doorway, which is a frame within a frame. I really like that. Now this shot is probably the best shot in the entire movie, and I love this shot. A throwback to the famous John Ford movie, The Searchers with John Wayne. This is such a cool shot. And this whole sequence is probably the best sequence in the film as it relates to vertical video. And it also just as it relates to the movie. I love all this stuff. It's a mix of all sorts of Westerns, but these shots, in my opinion, are more or less inspired by Sergio Leone. And so I love all the spaghetti Westerns from the 60s. But great framing here, looking the two shots there, an excellent way to use vertical video. I like that close-up here of him, and then I love this shot. You could use a shot like this. Again, imagine this spun to the side. You could look down and have this as a traditional wide angle shot as well, but it works great here with vertical. Same with this, looking over the hat at the other bad guy. This whole gunfight sequence is really well done. I really like it. Very unique framing. and it feels fresh, even though, of course, this kind of stuff has been done for 50 years or longer. And I love the shadows here too. The shadows are great. Like the close-up of the eye there is a little bit weird. I don't love that shot, but it is something that you can do with a phone that's pretty unique. These shots straight on of the face, I don't love those. They feel crowded for some reason because the eyes are cut off on the side. Not a great use for vertical frame. Works much better, I think, with a horizontal frame. But this right here is very cool where he gets shot. This is the kind of stuff I like using small cameras, and in particular here an iPhone, you got a body cam where it's strapped to his body. And then it turns into this weird vertical frame that could easily be horizontal because he's obviously laying on the ground. And so I think that's a really unique way to use an iPhone, and it works very well. And the reason it works well is because of the ultra wide lens, which I'll talk about in just a second. Coming down a stairway here, again, this is a great use of the vertical frame. Now we're in the 1950s. This whole film obviously is a look back at cinema through the decades. This is a nice transition. The stuntman, who by the way, this actor really is a stuntman in real life, looks up at the ceiling, and then I really dig this shot looking down on the car. I love those kind of shots, period, but it works well here in the vertical format. And this is a nice homage to North by Northwest, famous Hitchcock movie. This stuff is really nice. And you'll notice right here, with smartphones, it's tough to get shallow depth of field. But if you look closely behind this actor's face, you'll see that it's out of focus back there. And then right here, they did a focus pull. Look at that. And so it goes from this, and it pulls to the car, and then when he comes back, it comes back to him. One more time, look at that. You can see the background. Since I did use FiLMiC Pro on this, I'm assuming they used the focus pull feature in FiLMiC Pro, because they did use some external lenses, but they weren't the type that you can focus. They weren't using a DOF adapter. And so here they must have used FiLMiC Pro to set some focus points, and then boom, that's a great one. And then this shot right here, the mirror, another good example of a vertical shot, but then also if you notice, the background is in focus and they rack to the mirror. And that could have been done in post-production. It's very possible that was a post version, but maybe not. That could have been a rack. And then this is a really nice use of the frame. This is the only shot in the whole movie I think looks like a phone for some reason. They're using the ultra-wide lens, but the guy's not running very fast. And for some reason, that shot feels forced. It almost pulls me out of the movie. And then down here, you've got this hallway shot. Hallway shots work well. I did want to point out real quickly a technical thing. One of the biggest problems I have with shooting with these modern iPhones is the tone mapping. And I've seen really no problems in this short film at all with the tone mapping. But right here, there's one. Right there. Do you see that? Very subtle. Let me back up. The tone mapping it's really geared for photography, but it's in video as well too. And it's not good for video. It can be good because it gives you more dynamic range. But here, and what it often does is it'll make it look like your phone is on auto exposure. You get little subtle exposure bumps, typically in lower light when you have high contrast and something crossing the frame. That's exactly what this is. His black shirt crosses and you see that little pulse more or less. You can see the exposure change. It is a big problem. I have that happen all the time and I hate it. And it's actually limited me from using my phone on a lot of different projects because of this. And it's ruined some shots because this is pretty subtle. It can be 1,000 times worse than that. So I just wanted to point that out. There it goes. It did happen in this short film. Okay, so earlier I mentioned the ultra-wide lens, and that is really what has allowed them to use the phone on more action-oriented shots, because It has no OIS, which is great for video, because otherwise you get that jello-y, bouncy mess. You cannot fix it in post with stabilization or use it. It's unusable stuff. But the ultra-wide lens doesn't have it. The other two lenses do. The negative to the ultra-wide lens, of course, is it's a lower f-stop, lower aperture. It's a 2.4, and so it's not as good in low light. But in bright conditions like this, it works great. And so right here, you can see they put, this is their graphic, it says iPhone. They built like a custom rig, this yellow rig here. Let me zoom in. The phone is upside down, and that is the white cord there is a lightning connector, and that's going out to a video feed. This unit right here with these antennas is a wireless video transmitter, probably a Teradek. So basically they've rigged this up to be like a traditional setup just using the iPhone. That's the DP right there too. Basically, this is one of those rigs where they attach the camera to your body. And so it gives that really cool feeling of being connected to the actor. And again, if you used your normal lens, you could never pull this off. It would not work. The ultra wide allows this to happen, and it's a really cool shot. And that doesn't apply just to that shot there. It applies to a lot of the shots. Anytime they're jumping or leaping like that right there, that would not be done very easily without that ultra-wide lens. And not only that, it gives more of a perspective, obviously. It's a very wide field of view. Just a side note right here, this shot you can see behind him. In the actual movie, you can see he runs, and when I first saw this, I thought maybe they used a gimbal, but they didn't. They used what's called a techno crane. You can see it going behind him, and that way it can do a tilt. Right there behind him is the techno crane, and the techno crane, at least I think that's what that is. I'm pretty sure it is. A techno crane has an arm that moves, and so it can do a dolly. It can push in at the same time that it's booming and tilting. And so it's a very advanced piece of gear, and something that you or I wouldn't be able to have on a low budget job. We could do a gimbal shot instead. But in this case, because they're doing the effect where they're going out and then looking down over the edge of the building, it works out great.
That kind of punch in the gut sort of feeling.
But that also, again, is using the ultra wide lens. Okay, and speaking of lenses, you can see the DP right here putting a lens on the phone. And again, he's got this unique mount. One thing that I found interesting is normally on these Apple films, they use beast grip gear. They use a beast cage. This setup looks like a custom rig to me. I've never seen anything quite like it. But the white cable is the lightning adapter, and it has HDMI. You can see that. And then they have power coming out of it, just like something that I've done on one of my shoots, or you could do on one of your shoots. But he's putting a moment lens on right there. Let me zoom into that. I can't tell, but I'm pretty sure that's a moment wide. He's putting it on the main wide lens on the iPhone. And the reason you would do that, and it's one reason I still recommend getting external lenses, is because the main wide lens on the iPhone is without question the best lens. Not only is it the sharpest, but it has the best aperture. It's a 1.8, I believe. And so it does much better in low light. That's the main thing. And so you put a wide lens on that, and even though the ultra wide is super convenient, if you're on sticks and you're not moving a lot, using a wide lens that you attach is better. You'll get better quality. And so it's kind of cool to see them using a moment lens. Okay, earlier when I showed the shot of them going through what looked like a cave, and I said that was an effect shot, well, here it is. You can see this right here is a piece of glass with the set painted on it, and they're shooting through it. And right there in the middle is that sliver, which almost looks like a widescreen shot. And you can really see it well there. You can see it, that's the actual effect right there. So the top and bottom of this are a matte painting. Matte type paintings were done all the time back in the good old glory days of Hollywood. Instead of having visual effects, you would paint a mountain and they would shoot it. So just a really unique way to make your set look bigger, when in reality they're only shooting that little sliver in the middle, which again is like a widescreen shot put into a vertical shot. And I think that's pretty clever. Right here, I wanted to point out, this is the director, Damien Chazelle, looking at two monitors. And so that tells me, and you don't really see this in the behind the scenes footage, but that tells me they're shooting two cameras. Interestingly, that's FiLMiC Pro. You can tell because you can see the interface up on the monitor. So recently, FiLMiC Pro did an update, and now they'll send out clean HDMI, which is great. So now you don't have to worry about getting all the display from the app onto the monitors, which can make a really big difference. One thing not related to gear is it's interesting to see all the storyboards and they put them on set, which is kind of cool. I've actually never done that before. I've seen that on like commercials and agency spots, which I guess this is kind of a commercial. But it's nice to have that on set to where they can reference it. And you can see him looking there. But then you've got the shots here, and they match reasonably well to what they shot. I think that's pretty cool to see that in action. For me personally, I almost never storyboard unless I am doing an action scene. If I'm doing an action scene, then I will storyboard those particular scenes. I like how they did the shadows though. That's pretty cool. Storyboard, then the actual shot. I mean, that's like spot on. Earlier where I talked about having two cameras, you can't get a complete shot of the two cameras here, but on the right side of the frame, you can see the one camera down on the short sticks. Well, right above that, there is another camera. You can just see the matte box. And so that's the two different angles. There's camera A and there's the B camera. And you can see they have ND stuff written on there. That's a big HMI right there, probably a 10K, hard to tell, blowing right into the camera. But that's the two shots right there. So it's probably a wide shot and a tight shot of that. So they're rolling two cameras is my speculation. I can't guarantee that's the case. It wasn't mentioned in the behind the scenes, but watching through this, you can see that that's pretty much what's going on. Right here on the side of this camera case, it says Open AKS. If you don't know what that means, it just stands for all kinds of shit. So if you ever see that, that's what it stands for. It just means a box you throw all kinds of shit into. This scene right here, they used a dolly, and that is looks like a Fisher dolly to me. It's a large dolly. It's on track. And this is something that, of course, is great for bigger budgets, but you could do this on a low budget as well. You could use a doorway dolly. You could use a gimbal in this case. And so there's a lot of ways that you could pull off bigger looks like this on a low budget or a no budget. And here's the same dolly setup back here in the far left. You can get a little bit of a view of it there. Looks like some grips, or it's hard to say, working on the dolly there. And then they've got some of these little pieces of wood you use to level up the dolly track. And you got C-stands around, and you got a full crew on this shoot, that's for sure. Now, one last thing I want to talk about here is post-production, and I really couldn't find anything online or anything really in this video about post-production, which is kind of sad because post-production really ties it all together. The one thing I do want to note though is these shots here where he's floating, the wire shots. They're obviously all done using a blue screen, and so that means compositing and shooting with lower bit video, meaning this is 8-bit video, and the color space on this is 420. I'm not going to get too technical, but basically that doesn't necessarily give you the most color information to pull clean keys or to get the best results when you're color grading, because there's just not enough data there really, is to put it in layman terms. However, it actually looks surprisingly good. And so all these shots of him falling, I mean, that's obviously a composite. This is composited. This is the wire work, and they have a big fan blowing on him. But if you look closely around the edges or around his hair, you can't see any of the blue screen, even right down here. I mean, look at that. It looks pretty clean. And so that's a testament to, how good this video can actually look, even doing high-end compositing. Now, right here in particular, look at around his hair, the edges of his hair. They obviously added a little bit of softness to it, which is a common thing to do when you're pulling a key. But I don't see any video noise, and I don't see any remnants of the key. Now, again, granted, this is a high-end production, and so they probably used, After Effects, potentially. It could have been Nuke. I don't know. There's a lot of really great compositing software out there to pull keys like this. Whatever they did a really good job. Now, the keys look a little bit fake. Obviously. But as far as the actual work, the composites, they look surprisingly good. I really studied these shots, and if you didn't know better, you wouldn't realize that was shot on an iPhone. So I'm pretty impressed, and I'm hoping with the new iPhone, when this video comes out, the new iPhone will have already been released. And so I'll put a graphic up here on the screen if it happened. I'm hoping with the new iPhone, they'll have 10-bit video, and that will make color grading and doing this kind of stuff, keying better. But the point being, even with this lesser quality in quotes video, you can still pull pretty good keys and make it look good. Now, color grading, I couldn't find out anything how they did the color grading. So if you heard or if you know, maybe drop a comment down and let me know. It looks like they use some sort of LUT or some sort of gamma curve or softening. I'm not sure. They could have just made a custom LUT. They could have just done custom grading, which they probably did in a DaVinci Resolve system or something. Thought it had a very nice cinematic look to it. I really did. Well, again, I know this is an Apple produced project, so it's a big budget. And yeah, I mean, it would be hard for you or me or an indie filmmaker to do something at this scale, but it's not hard at all to get out there and make something like this. And that's kind of the point that I want to make. They shot this ultimately on an iPhone, and so that means you can do it too. To learn more about the FiLMiC Pro app, consider checking out my course, The Complete Guide to FiLMiC Pro. Link is in the description. Now, you may or may not have noticed I shot everything vertical here with my iPhone, so normally I wouldn't do that, but I wanted to have some fun putting this thing together. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.